Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hashem, Malachei Elyon. Melech, Malachei Amalachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Malachem Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Melech, Malachei Amalachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'chuvni l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Melech, Malachei Amalachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Seichem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Melech, Malachei Amalachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Let's call the ladies up and we'll light Shabbat candles right now. Yes.
Maybe we should move the table over.
Yes.
A little bit. So. Yeah, it's better. Katie was making the candles with pink lights. There we go. Okay, pull it out. There it is.
Get together. Asher kitchanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahad nekneh shalom. They give each other a blessing.
Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom.
We have more room down here. Oh.
Shabbat
Shalom.
It's turn page 16.
Shalom.
Matov. Matovu. Olech Yaakov. Mishnotecha Yisrael. Matovu. Olech Yaakov. Mishnotecha Yisrael. May the door of this synagogue be wide enough to receive all who hunger for love, all who are lonely for fellowship. May it welcome all who have cares to unburden, thanks to express, hopes to nurture. May the door of the synagogue be narrow enough to shut out pettiness and pride, envy and enmity. May its threshold be no stumbling block to young or straying feet. May it be too high to admit complacency, selfishness, and harshness. May this synagogue be for all who enter a doorway to a richer and more meaningful life. Amen. V'ani tefilati lecha Adonai, et ratzon Elohim, v'ro v'ro, chazdecha, Aneni be'emet yishecha. Let's turn down to page 24. This prayer is called L'chu Neranana, which means come, let us sing to the Lord. Okay, and it teaches us something important about the nature of prayer. Prayer is more than just uttering words. Prayer really needs to be a song. And why are songs so important in our culture? Because songs express yearning. A song, a love song, for example, desires intimacy, a way of conquering our aloneness or separateness. And these are all really the ingredients that make prayer very meaningful. Lechem neranena, lechem neranena, lechem nerana l'Adonai. Lechem neranena, lechem neranena, lechem nerana l'Adonai. Maria, Maria, Tzoni Shenu, Kadma Kana Benzona. Maria, Maria, Tzoni Shenu, Inzino Maria no. Lechem neranena, lechem neranena, lechem nerana l'Adonai. Lechem neranena, lechem neranena, lechem nerana l'Adonai. Maria, Maria, Tzoni Shenu, Kadma Kana Benzona. Maria, Maria, Tzoni Shenu, Inzino Maria no. If you look at the very last line, last two lines, it says, 40 years of generation wearied me, questioning and misunderstanding my ways. Therefore I vowed in my anger. Does God really get angry? Frustrated maybe, not angry. That they shall not enter the promised land. Here's how I would render it. Let me give you an alternative reading. 40 years that generation wore me out, questioning and misunderstanding my ways. Therefore I vowed in frustration. Oi! They're not ready to enter the promised land. Changes the meaning around just a little bit. But when you think about it, God doesn't get upset or angry at us if we fail to hit the mark. If we don't reach the promised land today, so long as we're alive, we may reach it tomorrow. Okay, let's turn now to page 40 for Lecha Dodi. Lecha Dodi Gatala, B'nei Shabbat, Lecha Dodi Gatala, B'nei Shabbat, Lecha Dodi Gatala, B'nei Shabbat, Shalom v'zachor v'dimorecha, Yishmi'anu v'hamichad, Adonai echad v'shemon echad, v'shem tiferes v'zikimah. Lecha Dodi likrat kalo, B'nei Shabbat mikal adela. Lecha Dodi likrat kalo, B'nei Shabbat mikal adela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, Kimi mekor abracha, Ve'rosh mikedem metucha, Shabbat 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 Shabbat. Lecha Dodi likrat kalo, B'nei Shabbat mikal adela. Lecha Dodi likrat kalo, B'nei Shabbat mikal adela. Mikdash melech v'nevuta, Page 42. He's holy, holy, he's my holy, 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 she's the Mary, Kavanaya like me. Let us go be, let us be Christ alone. The nation of me comes along. Be not ashamed, be not distressed. No longer bow down like a heathy oppressed. And you shall your children, hopes be fulfilled. Out of your ashes you can be fulfilled. Let us go be, let us be Christ alone. The nation of me come along. Let us be Christ alone. The nation of me come along. They who destroy you will themselves be destroyed. Your foes will be routed, your plots will be foiled, and you will your God by joy and pride, loving your heritage like your blessed God. Let us go be, let us be Christ alone. The nation of me come along, let us be Christ alone. They shall not be covered. In every way may you prosper and grow. Reverence for God, may you ever know. May you see redemption that He will bring. Songs of thanksgiving to Him you may sing. Let us go be. Let us be Christ alone. The nation of me come along. Let us be Christ alone. Everyone be bright. The Shabbat is not limited by doors of cement and wood. Unfortunately, we can't open the door because we have too many crazy people wanting to get in also. So we'll sing together, Boy Shalom. Boy Shalom, Asher V'Shalom. Open the way, hallelujah. Holy God, holy God. Let hallowed be Christ alone. We make the heavenly God alone. Let hallowed be Christ alone. We make the heavenly God alone. About Shabbat, the day divine, come and enjoy the brightness shine. Come to people who greet you with pride. Come and see Shabbat. Let us go be. Hey, everyone, take a seat. Thank you, Arlene. Okay, let's turn now to the Song of Shabbat. And the Song of Shabbat is the point. This is the point in the Siddur where, for us, it becomes Shabbat. I mention that because if you take a look at the history of Jewish communities, particularly in Eastern Europe, 150 years ago, you might be surprised, maybe even shocked to know that musical instruments in Orthodox synagogues were played on the eve of Shabbat. Now granted, they did accept Shabbat earlier than most congregations do today. But when they came to this particular prayer, even if it was light outside, it became Shabbat. Shabbat, remarkable holiday. What do you do in the desert if you don't know which day is Shabbat? The Talmud in Tractate Shabbat, around 71, 72 B or C, I don't remember, discusses that question. And we discover a fascinating answer. If you don't know which day Shabbat is, then you could designate any day as Shabbat. Think about that if we ever go to outer space. Imagine Jews living on Mars. Imagine Jews living on Titan. How are they going to observe Shabbat? Well, they're going to have to observe Shabbat exactly the way the Talmud recommends. You designate a time, and that time becomes Shabbat. And this tells us something else, which is even more fascinating, is that human beings have the power to create Shabbat. Now, of course, you could ask a very good question. How do we get from Saturday to Sunday? Where did the Christians get it wrong? I can assure you one thing, it didn't come from Jesus. In fact, I was telling some of my tennis friends earlier this week, and they said if Jesus were to come back alive today, guess where he would go and pray? At the synagogue. Not at the local church, not at the Catholic Vatican, at a synagogue. So who changed it? Well, this is really Paul's doing. All right. Mizmor shir yom HaShabbat Toldo l'Adonai Uzamer l'shimcha elyon Uzamer l'shimcha elyon Lagid b'boker chazdecha V'emunatcha b'leilot Alei asu v'alei navel Alei higayon b'chinor Mizmor shir yom HaShabbat Tov l'Adonai Uzamer l'shimcha elyon Uzamer l'shimcha elyon Ki simchatani Adonai b'falecha V'maseh yadecha ranen Ma gadlu ma'asecha Adonai Me'od amku makshavotecha Mizmor shir yom HaShabbat Tov l'Adonai Uzamer l'shimcha elyon Uzamer l'shimcha elyon Al yuduvun v'seiva L'shenim ranenim yohu Lehagi ki yashar Adonai Tzuri v'lo avata bo Mizmor shir yom HaShabbat Tov l'Adonai Uzamer l'shimcha elyon L'shimcha elyon Al yuduvun v'seiva L'shenim ranenim yohu Lehagi ki yashar Adonai Tzuri v'lo avata bo Mizmor shir yom HaShabbat Tov l'Adonai L'zamer Shimcha Elyon, L'zamer Shimcha Elyon. I wasn't sure if I said it already, but I don't mind saying prayers twice. All right, lingering in prayer is a very time-honored Jewish custom. Why is that important? When we go to synagogue, we shouldn't be in a rush to get out of services. Think about that. You should feel like you could kick back, almost take your shoes off. Well, if you lived in the days of the temple, you would take your shoes off. And where does that custom come from? Anyone know? Remember Moshe? When God first spoke to him, what did he tell him? Shal na'alecha miraglecha ki an lakodesh. Take your shoes off. You're standing on holy ground. Okay, everyone, please rise. Turn to page 52. Okay, roll into dawn, roll into night. Light becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Borei yom v'layla v'layom mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or, v'choshech mipnei or. El chavkayim tamid yomach v'layla l'lavet, Baruch atah Adonai, Mari v'Ami. You may be seated. We say, the stars above keep their appointed places in response to your divine will. We ought to be very grateful God created Jupiter and Saturn. Do you know why? What would happen to the Earth if we didn't have Jupiter or Saturn? We would be pelted by meteors. So where do all the meteors go? Where do comets strike first? You guessed it, Jupiter. And so when we take a look at the synchronicity of time and space, everything occupies its proper place. Okay, let's turn now to Avat Olam, page 60. Avat Olam, Beit Yisrael. Everlasting love, you lovely people, Israel. Ki hem chayenu ve'orech yameinu uvahem negeyam avalayla. Ki hem chayenu ve'orech yameinu uvahem negeyam avalayla. Vavat hatasib menu le'ol na'lamim baruch atah Adonai. Yisrael. Let's turn now to page 72. And 72 is actually a mystical number in Kabbalah. It's even a mystical number in Islam. How so? Ask me later. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchut Olam Va'ed. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר נבחי בצורך יום על לבביך ושנתן לבניך ודברת בם והשבתך בביתך והלכתך בדרך ושוב לך ובקמך וקשרתם לדע על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בעיניך וכתבתם על מזבחך ובשעריך. quietly to ourselves from page 80 to the bottom of page 82. למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים ללכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם amen. Make eye contact with your neighbor and say after me Adonai Elohechem amen. Your God is a God of truth. Hebrew word for truth is emet. Why is it called emet? Aleph is first letter, mem is the middle letter, taf is the last letter. So from the beginning, middle, and end, God is always true. Human beings are different. There's no guarantee a human being will be true. Your dog might be true, however. Well, why is that? If you spell a dog backwards, what do you get? God. So this teaches us in a strange way that God loves loyalty and gave a part of his own love to the little four-legged creatures we call dogs. Okay, page 86. Emet emunah kodol, emet emunah kodol, emet emunah, emet emunah, emet emunah kodol, v'kayam, emet emunah kodol, emet emunah kodol. Everything emunah, everything emunah kodol, v'kayam aleinu. Kihu Adonai Eloheinu, everything emunah, everything emunah. Okay, everyone please rise, get a little bit of movement. It's good for the soul. V'yeitzu la'adomo, v'yanatu Yisrael amo, emet emunah, emet emunah, emet emunah kodol, v'kayam, v'ikamocha v'nim Adonai, v'ikamocha v'davatodeh. Nora v'hilo lo tefele, Nora v'hilo lo tefele. V'ikamocha v'nem Adonai, v'ikamocha v'davatodeh. Nora v'hilo lo tefele, Nora v'hilo lo tefele. Machutara u'monero, Lokeya lifnei Moshe, Ze'evi ano ve'amru, Adonai Yilad Elam Bareh, V'ikamocha v'nem Adonai, V'ikamocha v'davatodeh. Nora v'hilo lo tefele, Nora v'hilo lo tefele. Makif Adonai et Yaakov, V'gam Yahadamena, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloah Yisrael, V'ikamocha v'nem Adonai, v'ikamocha v'davatodeh. Nora v'hilo lo tefele, Nora v'hilo lo tefele. Okay, thank you. And please sit down and take a seat, make yourself comfy. Let's turn to the prayer for peace. I often wonder, why do we pray so much for peace? Maybe because peace is the final frontier. Peace is elusive. We look at peace almost as an ideal. We think of a time when the lion shall dwell with the lamb, not necessarily be thinking about lamb chops for dinner. We think of a time when the world shall return to a state of innocence. And yet we wonder, how is that even possible? But peace is a possibility we must embrace. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, l'shalom, v'amidenu malkeinu l'chayim, l'shalom, l'shalom, uvros aleinu, sukat shlemecha, uvros aleinu, sukat shlemecha. Amen. Shelter us beneath your wings, O Adonai. Guard us from all harmful things, O Adonai. Keep us safe throughout the night, till we wake with morning's light. Teach us, God, wrong from right. Amen. 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 V'ros aleinu sukat shlemecha. V'ros aleinu sukat shlemecha. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai ha'perasek hashalom aleinu v'kol Yisrael v'al Yerushalayim. We pray for the peace of for his people Israel and for the peace of Jerusalem. You know, there's an old saying in Yiddish. Besser is a kalta piece von a verbrengte milchama. Better is a cold peace than a hot war. You can build on that. Okay, let's everyone please rise. Let's turn now to page 96. Uno, dos, tres, cuatro. Shabbat, Bene Israel, Shabbat, Lasso, Shabbat, Legor Tamrit, Shabbat, Bene Israel, Shabbat, Lasso, Shabbat, Ben Yemen, Ben Yisrael, Otiliolog, Otiliolog, Beshamru, Ben Yisrael, Hashabat, Lasso, Hashabat, Ledotam Ritola. Kishesh Yemel Sadonai, Sadonai, Tashmai Vadaretz, Vayom Ashvi, Shabbat Beinabash, Shabbat Beinabash, Shabbat Beinabash, Beshamru, Bnei Israel, Hashabat, Lasso, Hashabat, Ledotam Ritola. Page 108. Yitkada, Yitkadash, Shemei Mabal, Yahweh, what if you take in the Mafate? V'chayechom, V'yemechom, V'chayechom, V'Yisrael. V'agalama, Shala, V'vizman Kalim, V'mermei. Yesh Mera Menorah, Yonam Elamaya, Yibarak Mishtabah, Avivman Vidnasei, Vihadar Vitolim, Shmei Kuchav, Leila, Vitorata, Vishirata, Sush Lechata. Okay, everyone please turn now to the shorter version, page 128. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, El Haggadah, Gibor Benara, El Yom Konei Shemayim V'Aretz, Magen Avo Bidvaro, the V'chayei meitim b'ma'amaro, ha'el kadosh kamo, ameniach liyam yom Shabbat kodsho, kivom ratzah, laniach lahem l'fano navod. V'yira b'fachad, v'nader lishma b'chol yom tamid. Mi'ein habrachot elodaot. Adon Shalom, Mekadesh Shabbat, Morech Shvi'i, Miniach B'Kedusha, L'Am B'Kedusha Ne'onei, Zecher L'Maseh Bereshit. Eloheinu, Elohei Avoteinu, page 130. Ritzei Menuchateinu, Kasheinu B'Mitzvotecha V'Tein Chokeinu, Toratecha, Sabeinu Mituvecha, V'samachenu b'shuatecha, v'taher libeinu, li'avdecha b'emet, v'anchilenu, Adonai Eloheinu, v'yava u'ratzon, Shabbat kodshecha, v'nuchuvo Yisrael, v'kadesh shemecha, Baruch atah Adonai, v'kadesh Shabbat. Page 134, you may be seated. Yet Yelavi Kadash Rebal, Yamon Martha Tave and Mokate, the Chayechon, Nechla Padalisa, Bakal, this one, Cardi, Rame, Eshme Rabon Bora, Alam Elamaya, Yidbarak, Ishtabak, Mitbahavi, Mami, Nase, Vihadar, Vidalimitolosh, Mekucha, Brechu, Leila, Minkabrahata, Vashata, Tushbata, Nahamata, Damir, Yamam, Rame, the Kabats of Lotan, Umamuta. Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Shabbat Shalom. This Torah portion this week is for Parshat Eikev. You know, one of my favorite 19th century personalities was Baron Rothschild. A remarkable figure by any means. And he always had people soliciting tzedakah from him. And some people were very, very inventive of how they would get his attention. There was one lady in particular who was waiting for him to pass the hallway, and she said, "Oi, if I only had 5 pounds. If I only had 5 pounds." So what did Rothschild do? He gave her 5 pounds. 5 pounds back then was the equivalent of about $25. And she thanked him profusely. But after Baron Rothschild went into his office, she slapped herself in the face and she said, "Oi, why didn't I ask for 10 pounds? Why didn't I ask for 10 pounds? And there's a moral here which the Talmud tells us. Anyone who has $100 will always ask for 200. And this tells us something about the nature of the human condition. How do we describe our nature in one word? I believe we could say insatiable. We are insatiable creatures. And this is very important because we live in what's called a consumeristic culture and society. When I was growing up, there was a longshoreman named Eric Hoffer. I read his book when I was in high school. He was not a philosopher, but he was a very, very wise old man. And he said, you can never get enough of what you don't need to make you happy. The gap in our economy is between what we have and what we think we ought to have. And this is one of the principal reasons why we see so much class warfare in our society today, where people who are affluent are being pitted against people who are not affluent. Therein, Howard once said, you succeed in life when you really want is only what you really need. Similar to what Ben Zoma says, Ezehu Asher, Asameach B'choko. If we can learn to be satisfied with what we have, we might be more content than we realize. Nature provides a free lunch, but only if we control our appetites. Advertising is the art of making whole lives out of half-truths. Think about this for a moment. How many commercials do you listen to a day? Stop and wonder. Ask that question. From the time you get up in the morning, how many commercials are we bombarded with each day? How many commercials are we bombarded with every hour, every 5 minutes? We're probably bombarded with hundreds of commercials in the course of the day. And what's the purpose of advertising? Modern advertising. It's to make us insatiable. It's to make us feel as if we don't have enough. And maybe this is one of the great teachings of our tradition. It's not the person who has much, who is much. It is the person who is much, who has much. One of my favorite psychologists of the 20th century, a nice Jewish boy, almost became a rabbi. His name was Erich Fromm. And Erich Fromm survived the death camps. And he wrote a most wonderful book called To Be or To Have. And in his study, he raises a very important question that's central to this week's Torah portion. How do we find contentment? How do we find contentment in modern society? So he says there are two modes. There's the having mode, and there is the being mode. What is the having mode? The idea that the more you have, the richer you are. More money you have, the richer you are. But the being mode doesn't look at external wealth in those terms. It looks at life in terms of contentment. Living a life with spiritual purpose. Being content with a little as if it were a lot. We find, for instance, in the manna, Erich Fromm explains, that you could not hoard the manna. No matter how much manna you tried to gather, you always had exactly what you needed and exactly what your family needed. So this teaches us that finding contentment with what we have is very, very important. And we find here in this week's Torah portion a very important passage that says, man does not live on bread alone, but only on the emanations that proceed from the mouth of God. That translation is not a literal translation. That actually comes from Isaac Luria, one of the great Kabbalists of the early 17th century. We may study him in our adult education class. I think you'd find this story to be very, very interesting. So what is it that attracts us to food? Is it the physical substance, or is it the spiritual substance? And this question is relevant to the manna from heaven. What blessing did our ancestors say on the manna? Did they say, Hamotzi lechem min haaretz? who brings forth bread from the ground. But the manna did not come from the ground. Where did it come from? So they said, Hamotzi lechem min hashamayim. And if you take a look at the stories of Rav Nachman of Breslov, he often likes to contrast two types of people. Just like Eric Fromm. The wealthy individual, the one who looks at knowledge and as power, and the simple person who's very content with what he has. And the wealthy individual is what he calls the chacham. But chacham in Yiddish has a very different meaning than it does in Hebrew. What does chacham mean normally? Someone who's wise, someone who has wisdom. But in Yiddish, what does it connote? Wise guy, Mr. Know-it-all, someone who thinks he has all the answers. And then you have the Tom. How do you translate Tom? Tom is the simple person. And yet he's not so simple. He's more sophisticated. There's more to his personality than what meets the eye. And Nachman loves to explain how these two individuals know each other, have known each other throughout their lives. And the Chacham, despite his material success, he can't ever find contentment. It's elusive. It evades him. But the Tom is always happy. He takes a look at a small morsel of bread and he feels like he's eating the manna from heaven. And the Chacham asks the Tom, what is your secret? Why am I so miserable, even though I have so much more than you? And the Tom says, I'm just happy to be alive. And I try to recognize God's gifts at all times. Maybe this is the point of the Parsha. Maybe this is the point of the Parsha. Is that we have to find spiritual purpose to enjoy life fully. We have to find out why we're here. Mark Twain, I mentioned this a few weeks ago. So the only thing that's more important than the day you were born is the day you figure out why you were born. And when we have that kind of mindset, when we have that kind of disposition, we won't need to wear the fanciest clothes, we won't need to drive electric cars, which, by the way, are not terribly good for the environment, despite what you hear. Learn to be content with whatever God gives us. And this, I think, is important. Life is a gift. But to experience the fullness of this gift, we have to have pasadimenta. We have to have peace of mind. Peace of mind that will enable that will enable families to endure tough times. Isn't it tragic that even those people who win the lottery, so many of them 5 years later have less than they had before they won the lottery? Why is that? The answer is very simple. For some people, there's a hole in the soul. When there's a hole in your gas tank, you can be pumping gas all day long. But you know what? That gas is going to go to waste. And when there's a hole in the soul, we lose our bearings. We don't understand who we really are, what God has meant for us to be. And this is the tragic this is the tragic legacy of an affluent society. Is the more we have today, you find more people taking fentanyl and other drugs and really doing pretty wild things to get the feeling as if they were alive. But the real problem is there's that emptiness inside that can't be sated unless we learn to connect with the deepest part of our souls that yearns a relationship with the divine. Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom.
That was short. I like short drushes.
Short but good.
Abe Lincoln said, by his Gettysburg Address, if I can't convince you in 10 minutes, how will I be able to convince you, the nation, in an hour? Page 166, please rise. Aleinu l'shaber l'adam hakol, v'tei b'dulav yetzer b'reshit, shelo atzanu k'dvayei haratzot, v'lo samanu v'shuvot adamah, shelo samcho k'nekahem v'goleinu k'chamanam, v'nachnu korim v'shlachim v'modim, v'demele malchei amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, she'bunat hashamayim, yesed ha'oreh, Moshe Nikara, Hashemayim Imah, Ushmi Nabuzo, Ushmi Nabuzo, Eloheinu Eloheinu, Eloheinu Malkeinu, Efesu Lato, Kapkatu, Letoratu, De'edata Yom Be'ashemota, Ki Adonai Hu Elohim, Hashamayim Imah, Haaretz Mitachadenu Reino. Let's pray that God should give every one of us a tiny ray of light that will lead to the enlightenment of ourselves and the enlightenment of the world. A light that is so powerful that the person who experiences this light will be able to look at their lives very differently from the way they've looked at it until now. Melech HaKol Haaretz, Vayom Hahu, Yeh Adonai Echad, U'Shemo Echad, U'Shemo Echad. Okay, are there any yard sites tonight? Who? Yes.
My mother's. That's actually for tomorrow.
Okay, what's your mother's name?
Hannah.
Shoshan.
Hannah Shoshana.
Hannah Bat Shoshana.
Chana Bat Shoshana. Okay, and I am remembering my son who passed away almost a year ago. Hard to believe. Age 42 from ALS. Page 184, anyone wishing to say Kaddish for a loved one. Yitkadal, Yitkadash, Shemei Rabah. Yomad, Amarech Yiritei, V'yomlich Malchutei. V'chayechon, V'mechon, V'chayeh L'chol Beit Yisrael. V'agol, V'zmokori, V'ramein. V'hei Shmei Rab, V'vorach, V'lam, V'nelamaya. Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitba'ah, V'yitramam, V'yitnasei. V'yadar, V'yitalim Talal, Shemei L'kutsha, V'chol. Leila, Mikol, V'chata, V'sherata. Yeshuvata v'na'amata da'amiram yamah v'rumain Yehi Shlom Rabbi M'Shemayim V'chaim Aleinu V'kol Yisrael v'rumain Osa Shalom v'rumain V'yaseh Shalom Aleinu V'kol Yisrael v'rumain. Okay, call Madam President. Madam President, please come up. Take a seat.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shalom.
Rabbi, thank you for leading us in a meaningful service.
You're welcome.
Much appreciated. And we have, Florida's very well represented, both on Zoom and here now.
We love Florida.
Hey, Florida. Well, we won't go there. But Anyway, the Zimmer family, Ron and Edie, it was so nice to have you and your son Alex. Alex, if it wasn't for you, they wouldn't be here. So very happy to have you. And Dr. Sid Cohn. Doctor, thanks for joining us again. And Jeannie is also from Florida. She's Rabbi's sister. And it's good to see you all, Randall and Monique, Kelly. Hopefully you'll be able to join us again tomorrow morning for Rabbi's Torah study. That's always very interesting. And then we'll have a Torah service. Afterwards, we'll do a nice Kiddush. If you're within 25 miles of Temple Beth Shalom, please try to be here in person, because that's the best way. And Rabbi, did you want to talk a little about your classes coming up?
Yes, we're going to begin a brand new class on Tuesday night. We're going to be studying Talmud. And I thought we would study chapter 2 of Tractate Bava Metzia, which deals with lost property. It's a fascinating piece. Now, you might wonder, how does the rabbi know Talmud? Well, first of all, to be a rabbi, you have to study a lot of Talmud. Now, it's true. Some rabbis don't study very much Talmud, but if you come from the more orthodox tradition, you study Talmud perhaps more than anything else. And when I was a day school teacher, I taught from second grade through high school. And I had to teach 3 separate classes in Talmud at the day school, at the yeshiva. I just did. I didn't think much of it. But really, teaching 3 classes, 3 different tractates of Talmud, can be fairly challenging. And what is special about Talmud is it's very dialogical. So if you like to have a spirited discussion, if you want to understand why Jews make such good attorneys, it's because of the Talmud. So we're going to be studying chapter 2 of Bava Metzia. I'll be sending you copies of the text so we can have a thoughtful discussion. And on Wednesday night, we have been studying the Tanya. I'd like to do a few more sessions in the Tanya because people seem to enjoy the discussions on human nature. How do we improve it? How do we transcend it? How do we change it? Questions like that, very, very interesting. So feel free to come at 7:30, and anyone is welcome. And let's see, who is that over there? Hello, Kelly. Kelly's friend. Okay, so we'll see you. Let's see. Let's conclude with the Adon Olam. What page is Adon Olam? Okay, turn to page 280. Let's see if you recognize the melody. Adon Olam Hashem Malach V'tem Kol Yitzir Nivra Le'en Naso B'chef Sakol Azai Melech Shemo Nikra V'yacharei Kiklot HaKol Levado Yimach Nora V'ho Haya V'hoveh V'ho Yiyeh V'divara V'hu Mecha V'yen Sheni Yam Shalom Le'achbira V'li Reshit V'li Tachlit V'lo Ha'od V'am Yisra V'hu Eli V'chai Goli V'sochev Li V'ein Tzara V'hu Nisi Umanos Li V'nat Kosi V'yom Ekra V'yado Avki Bruchi Ve'ti Sham V'ya'ira V'imrochi Geviyati Adonai Li V'lo Ira Everyone please rise. I'm not a Kohen, but I'm a member of the priestly people of Israel. And we all have the power to give each other blessing. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. Yair Adonai panav elecha v'yichunecha. Yis Adonai panav elecha v'yosmecha. Shalom. May God bless you and protect you. May He lift His countenance and be gracious to you. May He lift His presence always and grant you the greatest blessing of all, blessing of peace of mind. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom.